Zach, so excited for you to be on Talking Church today.
Man, thank you for having me. What an honor.
It's been a privilege to know you throughout the years, being friends. I feel like I have so much to talk about. Even seeing you today, I'm like, there's so much to catch up on. But I'm like, let's save it. Let's catch up on the podcast. And so
would love that.
You're doing well?
I'm doing great. Back in Minnesota for now. Loving it.
You're known to always be an optimist. We're going to get to your book, See the Good, in a little bit here. Yeah. But every time I see you, you're always happy. You're always joyful. And the ironic part is, for me, my dad always tells me, like, Logan, you always look angry and you always look mad. And when you go on stage to preach or receive offering or anything, you always look mad. And so I'm like, I'm hoping that today you can bring the joy out of me, Zach.
I hope so too. I know you as a very kind, joyful guy. So
thank you.
I've never thought that looking at you.
Well, the dad, there you go.
Yeah, today's a new day.
Yeah, exactly. But many people may know you from the Bible study, and maybe there's some listening. They go, "Who's this guy?" Well, I think they're going to love you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about the Bible study, what it is, and then obviously there's been some updates, we can get into that, but that's kind of what started really this journey of book writing and now into a lot more.
Totally. Yeah, I went through kind of a crisis of faith back in 2014, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, what I wanted to believe, if I wanted to be a Christian anymore. I was raised in the faith, and I hit a spot where I was questioning it all. I ended up moving out to Australia for almost a year, where we studied the Bible really intensely for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And by the end of it, we had like an entire commentary on every book of the Bible. And so I realized that a lot of my friends aren't able to just get away and move to Australia for a year to study the Bible, but they still wanted to go through a similar experience. And so I wrote a book called The Bible Study, and it basically holds your hand as you read through the entire Bible over the course of a year and figure out how each book relates to your life throughout the process.
So I guess someone might ask the question, what makes you qualified to write a book? Like, how did you get over that? Like, I feel like all the time whenever people bring up questions like, are you a doctor? Are you a this?
Totally.
It's like, are you a theologian? How can you write the Bible study?
For sure. No, I get that all the time, and I still get it today. And I think God qualifies us when he has put a passion or a calling on our lives. And I know that might be like a Christianese thing to say, but it's really true. This book isn't very deep on my opinion on things. It's pretty much even across the board, whatever you believe. And it is just holding your hand so that you read through the entire Bible, and it asks questions to bring things to mind throughout.
So when you write this, you think, okay, maybe someone else might want to do this, maybe your friends.
Yeah.
Take us through the journey a little bit of, you write the Bible study. It ends up, the end of the story, for those who are curious, ends up being really successful. Yeah. And I mean, you talk about even in the book here about truckloads. I remember you posting Instagram stories of truckloads leaving.
Crazy.
How did it get from you're writing this, you said in your parents' basement, to sending out semis every week?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, praise God. That's really what it comes down to, is God's hand was on it. We approached the whole process as if it was an e-commerce business versus just a publishing house. And so I wrote the book. I started reaching out to publishers. Every publisher turned me down. Every literary agent turned me down. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do it myself. And so we ended up doing a Kickstarter campaign in 2017, and it was a successful campaign. We did $24,000 in pre-orders in 30 days, and I was like, oh, we might have something here. And we ended up releasing the book a few months later, and it didn't do very well. And I was like, what in the world? We just had this successful campaign. What happened? And I was really convicted that my heart wasn't in the right place with it. And as I rethought what I wanted to do, kind of my heart behind the book in general, that's when it started to grow. And over the last 3 years, I mean, we were sending out, a semi was coming up to pick up pallets every single day for a while, which is like so mind-blowing. Who would have thought? I wrote it in my parents' basement.
Yeah, no, I can attest to that because we use the same we're both here in Minneapolis. We use the same distributor, and I remember going in there and seeing all of it. And you put a sticker of your face on the box, every single box.
Yeah, I thought it would be funny, like when the postman was like, "Oh, I need to return this book. Where do I send it?" "Oh, we go to this guy because I just have my face on every box." And I did it as a joke for the first 1,000, and then people started commenting on it and saying that they thought it was so funny, because to me it's hilarious seeing thousands of books go out of your warehouse every day with a smile, like a smiling face on it. That cracks me up.
Yeah, for me it'd be a frowning face, I think.
But we're gonna change that after today.
Exactly. Yes. At the end of this episode, I will be hurting.
We're making you stickers.
Yes. So now the Bible study, you're since kind of, that book exists and it's out there, and now you're looking at other things. Talk about some of the changes that have happened within the Bible study, but then also I want to shift towards your new book here. Sure. And just got done reading it, and it's so good, by the way.
Thank you.
I feel like whenever I read a book that a friend sends me, I'm like, oh, good job, buddy. And sure. Obviously proud of them, but I was really interested, and I listened to the audiobook, and I love that you read the audiobook too.
So fun.
I always tell people, read your own audiobook. It means so much hearing it. So anyways, I've jumped in front. But.
No, absolutely. So with the Bible study, we ended up creating a business called The Brand Sunday, and it was basically the umbrella company of everything that we did, just a bunch of tools to help people grow in their relationship with God and be less overwhelmed by the Bible. And so we ended up partnering with a big publisher about 6 months ago, and they kind of took over, allowing them to really run with it, because I think I hit a wall for myself on how far I could take it, just doing everything independently. And I know that they could take it so much further. So we were acquired back in October of last year, which is insane to even think about. And it really opened up new doors for me to focus on what's next, to focus on releasing See the Good, and then some other projects I have coming out.
When you're an entrepreneur, and what I've noticed about entrepreneurs is you can't stay still in a project for so long.
Yeah.
And you talk even in the book about all the different things you've done, which seems crazy, like the amount of things you've done just in general. Again, I moved to Australia for a year and I did this. But entrepreneurs can't sit still, and you always have to work on something new. So maybe we'll get into some of the things you're working on. But again, I want to talk about this book. The book is called See the Good. What prompted the title of that?
Yeah, I think right now, so often when you look around, people are so overwhelmed with life. They're very pessimistic. They look at the world and like, oh, everything's falling apart. But in reality, I really believe that God is still moving all around us. And I believe that if we focus on where he is moving and pull that out in our day-to-day, that we're going to be much more joyful. We're going to be much more happier in life. And that's what I really want, is to get other people to be joyful and enjoy their life, instead of just getting through this life in order to one day get to heaven.
Yeah, you talk at the beginning of the book about how all the stats of how things have improved. And I've heard other people briefly talk about this, but can you share, maybe from memory, again, putting you on the spot here, but some of the things even just in the world, as we who are in ministry, we are in a lot of ways working with people who are coming out of difficult situations, but also seeing amazing things. But can you talk about some of that?
Yeah, I think it's so important to have a big picture perspective of how the world is right now and how we've improved over the last 20 years alone. Like, it's amazing when you look at the stats, like world hunger has decreased by 40%. Violent crimes are going down. Literacy is going way up. Extreme poverty is falling.
Yeah, like it's cut in half every decade.
Yeah, it's insane. Since 1991, cancer death rates have fallen 33%. Like, that's amazing stuff, and we should be so grateful for that. But we look at it as like, oh, everything's falling apart and it's getting way worse. When in reality, when you get a big picture perspective on it, things are actually improving.
Yeah, I was at a conference the other week, and one of the speakers shared a lot of those stats within the church.
Yeah.
And he said, we hear all these stories about how the church, and particularly I think it's because we have a very American view on just life as Americans, as we do, and all the Canadians said, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how evangelicals are actually growing twice as fast as the world population is.
Wow.
And so you think about across the world, and we're like, oh man, the Lord is, he's not doing anything, or the church is shrinking, and what are we going to do? And it's horrible. But when you actually look, that's not true. Right. Again, maybe in pockets or maybe in a certain country, but you look across the world, that's not the case. Someone else who's known to be a very positive person is by a guy by the name of Bob Goff.
Totally.
He happens to have written the foreword of your book. Talk to us about how that happens. I know he's the guy that will answer the phone call, but just because he answers the phone doesn't mean he'll commit to do a foreword for the book.
Sure.
Talk about how that relationship started, how that's grown, two of the most positive people. I want to be in a room with both of you. I've had the chance to spend some time with him, but tell us, Bob Goff did your foreword. That's awesome.
Absolutely. He's probably the most inspirational person ever to me. I've looked up to him for years and years, and I've been able to build a relationship with him over the last 2 or 3 years.
Did you just call him, or how did it start?
We ended up bringing our entire team out to he has a resort out in San Diego, just outside of San Diego, called the Oaks. And it's an amazing place to take your team, to go out for workshops, just to get away and to grow. And I knew that they were just opening. So we brought our entire team out there to do a one-on-one with him for like 3 days straight, and just built that relationship. I kept going back out there. So anybody listening, the Oaks is an amazing spot to really get centered and to grow.
Yeah, in San Diego, anytime, we're recording this here in winter in Minnesota, anytime I can think about an excuse to go to San Diego, I'll 100%. Make sure to do it.
Yeah. My wife always questions why I go so much more often during this time of year compared to the summer. But that's it.
We're just trying to be smart.
Yeah,
that's all.
Exactly.
So from that relationship, you said, hey, Bob, do the foreword for my book.
Yeah, I said I'd be honored if he would do it, and he agreed. And I mean, what a blessing. It's amazing.
Do you have a favorite Bob story? There's a few stories that I can think of that he told us just from, he spoke at River Valley a couple times. Sure. But is there one that jumps to mind?
I think just everything that he, like his entire life is just so funny all the time. Yeah. So just being around him, he's always sharing stories. But it's also amazing, like having his kids write letters to world leaders, asking them if they could come over for a sleepover. Yeah. And all of a sudden, after a few months, kids started getting responses, and he was like, well, I promised that I would take the kids to the palace of these people if they accepted the invitation for a sleepover. And they started going to like palace after palace after palace. And being a 7-year-old kid, a 12-year-old kid, I can't imagine what that would do. So it really inspires me for when I have kids one day. What opportunities can I give them that are going to shape who they become? And eventually, I really believe that things like that will make somebody change the world.
Oh, yeah. And he talks about the climbing Kilimanjaro. And just, I mean, there's so many stories, the flying planes. I mean, if you've read his books before, his books are full of these amazing stories. But I remember he said he cuts the hole out of his left pocket or his right pocket, and if he puts anything in there, it'll fall down his pants. And he's like, if I don't think about it, if it's not as important to me to where I actually think to put it in my good pocket, then that means I didn't need it, and so I just leave it behind.
Totally.
It's like, what? Like some of the things that he says, and even like he quits something every Thursday.
Right. Yes.
And he said one time I called this board I was on and I quit. And then he said the next day I just quit being a professor. And and you're like, it's just bizarre. But it's again, amazing. That way to live, it kind of is holding everything loosely. And I see that really in this book so well. And again, there were so many things in there that I love, not just because I'm also from Minnesota, sharing about the state fair and going out on the lake and everything. But what has been some of the responses? And by the way, those who are listening, like, I wanted to talk to you here. Like, I know I'm talking about the book, but just so people know, like, I want to talk about this. This isn't an ad for the book, even though I'm doing it. But I was so encouraged, and I was even sharing how there was just some discouraging things that have happened, like even this week. But then reading this, it lifts me. What has been some of the response you've seen from people as you had the Bible study, but now you have a book that's more about you?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's amazing. Like somebody sent me a message the other day and was like, hey, life was really tough. I was thinking of ending my life. And as I was reading your book, like things changed for me. And just getting messages like that, like, what? God, thank you that you've allowed me to be in that position. That's absolutely incredible. So just hearing things like that, seeing how it is shifting people's perspective on life and making them more joyful and hopeful of the future, that's all I could ever imagine from it.
Yeah. You talk in the book about working for a guy named Gavin Kaysen. And for those who maybe are not familiar with who he is, if you're from our area, you'd probably know him. But he's a world-renowned chef. Has restaurants all over, but it has a particular one called Spoon and Stable that he worked at. Yeah. It's generally known to be the number one restaurant in the Minneapolis area. When I was reading that, I knew we were going to have this conversation. I wanted to ask you about what it was like working for somebody like that, because maybe people are out there and they work for a pastor that people ask me about, like, what's it like working for your dad? But there's people that are well known and are experts at their craft, and I always love we talk about Bob Goff. He's an expert at kind of everything and just being positive. But talk a little bit about working for somebody that is really world renowned, but then you have to work for him as a boss and an individual, and you don't get to just see him on TV.
Totally.
You get to actually see him on the day-to-day.
Yeah, absolutely. Gavin is an expert at his craft. He knows hospitality better than anybody that I've ever met. I worked in the hospitality industry for like 12 years. So serving, managing restaurants. I helped Gavin open a restaurant as well. And just understanding the importance of making somebody feel special in a small moment. So from the moment that they walk in the door till the moment they leave, they feel like all attention is on them and that everybody is there to serve them in the best way possible. And us as believers, like, we're supposed to be hospitable to strangers. And so having a restaurant or having a church or even just your house and focusing on the other person to make sure that all of their needs are met, making sure that they feel special no matter what, is one of the best things.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me think, would we rather have people have the best experience at a restaurant or in our churches?
Yeah, wow.
In our small groups, on our teams. Like, we want people to feel something.
Yeah.
But we want them to feel the presence of God. But what were some of the things that you would do at those restaurants that were maybe those extra touches that were above and beyond?
I think people just want to feel known or seem like they are known. And so it was very much, we would take notes on almost everybody, and we would know a lot about them. We would know what they liked, what they didn't like, so that the next time that they came in, we had notes on them. So it'd be like, oh, well, Zach, you don't drink, so we aren't going to bring a drink menu to him. Oh, Zach's friend Caleb, he's gluten-free, so we know that when Caleb's with Zach, he's always going to get a gluten-free menu. And it was just things like that where you walk in and it's like, oh my goodness, you guys are here doing all this for me. That just makes for a really special moment, and it makes you want to keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, the word I think of is intentionality.
Yeah.
And it's ironic, but how often in churches are we so intentional about our service orders?
Yeah.
We're so intentional about the way the screens look, about what we're wearing maybe, about all that, but we're not as intentional with people. And I don't mean that to be like a dig on pastors. Again, I'm talking about myself here.
Yeah.
One of the things I started doing is anytime I meet somebody new, I just pull up my phone and I take notes about them.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know I'm not going to remember you if I just trust my memory.
For sure.
And I've done a lot of reading. There's a bunch of books about memory. There's a book called Unlimited Memory, I think by a guy named Kevin Horsley. But he talks about all these memory tricks on how you can remember. But the number one memory trick is to take notes.
Oh, interesting.
And
I believe it.
Because once you put it down somewhere, you're telling your brain that it's important. And again, how many families do people meet at church where a pastor will go, oh, great to meet you. And you immediately forget their name.
Yeah.
But if you forget their name, I think a lot of people, they admit defeat at that point, right? And so they're like, all right, I forgot their name. It's already worthless. But could you remember something about them? And so even if I forget their name, I'll describe what they look like and then write all the things I know about them. And then this is what I do. And sorry, I'm hijacking the podcast.
I love it.
But I'll go up to them. I'll say, hey, I'm so sorry. I forgot your name, but I remember we talked last week. I remember you're an engineer. You work at this company. You've just moved here from Delaware, whatever it is. Can you remind me your name? Next time, I won't forget it.
Amazing.
And whenever I say that, they say, why do you say that?
Yeah.
Our brain is way smarter. It seems weird to say that our brain is smarter.
But it's true.
But our brain is so powerful, maybe that's better, that if you tell it that it's important, your brain's going to recognize it just said important. I better file this in a better way. And so I've tried to do that. And again, I'm not perfect at it, but it's helped me so much to to go, I mean, how many times do you go to church and you see that person that you've seen for a year straight, but you've never actually met,
100%,
but you kind of pretend like it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. And
it's not even just at church, it's at the gym or it's wherever. And I think all of us have like these basic things that we say to people to make them feel good. I remember I was at a church and this girl came up to me and she's like, I just love that color on you. I was wearing a white t-shirt. Like it wasn't anything
that
special.
White, that ivory,
that really makes your eyes pop.
Yeah.
Like, what? But I think we just get used to saying the same thing every time that we see somebody new, and it's like commenting on something. But when you actually make it personal, it's a game changer. So I got to remember to do that. I got to start taking notes on people.
Yeah, and I also think with like that color looks great on you. I mean, obviously white, it's not. But some people need like people who are really introverted. They need something that they can kind of fall back on. So I'd encourage people actually, maybe it's not saying white is a good color on you, but even having something where this is the question that I'm going to ask them that's deep enough that I'm comfortable with.
For sure.
And so I always think it's hobbies. And reading your book, do you have every hobby of everything ever? Like you talk about surfing and you talk about golfing and you talk about all these things. Like, is there anything Zach Windahl doesn't do?
I just like to try new things. I like new experiences. I wanna have fun and be out there. And there's nothing that I'll say no to for the most part.
Well, be careful what you say because now that you're here, maybe we'll run out in the snow or something.
Yeah, but please.
Talk about growing up. You talk a little bit about this in the book, but it wasn't always that way. You kind of share a funny story, but when you're a kid, you would vomit. I mean, just vomit your food all the time. It sounds crazy. I don't know. I guess I didn't know how to transition into that.
Yeah. But no, it was great. It was flawless.
What was going on?
I had anxiety when I was a kid, and certain smells and like the excitement of a bunch of people in a place would just trigger it. And I would
wait, the excitement of a bunch of people?
Yeah. Like if I went into the cafeteria at school in elementary school, I would walk in and there would be something with the smell and 100 kids rowdy, getting excited that I would just
anxiety vomit.
Yes.
Real vomit,
like all over. My teachers hated it. And so for a while they had to make me eat in the classroom by myself. And so my mom would pack my lunch so I could
How old were you?
This was like 4th grade. Yeah, I was like 18.
Last year.
Yeah. And like I would have to sit in the cafeteria, or sit in the classroom. My mom would make my food, and the teacher would say, "Does anybody want to sit with Zach today?" And kids would be like, "I don't want to sit with Zach."
Because they got to stay back in the classroom.
Because they got to stay back. They want to be with their friends. They want to be the ones inducing my vomiting. And so I remember one day there was a new kid in class, and praise God for this new kid. He didn't know what he was getting into. First day of class, teacher asked, does anybody want to stay back with Zach? And he raised his hand, and Dave and I became close friends. We ended up living like 2 blocks from each other, and he was one of my best friends literally all through high school. So,
just because he sat with you when
that's it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But so going from there, you get over this, I assume?
Yeah, it happened. It happened a few times in junior high. It happened once in college. It doesn't happen much anymore. I've found ways around it.
Yeah, but you talk as you got older that you were having these anxiety attacks. And so that you were having this, you talked to your doctor and you kept having these anxiety attacks, but you felt like there wasn't something right about it.
Yeah. It was crazy. For years, actually, I would go into the doctor and they would always be like, oh no, you're having anxiety. You have all these different things that you're dealing with. And I'm like, but I'm not an anxious person at all. I don't understand where this is coming from. And I was doing my own research because I think when other people can't figure something out, you start doing your own research. And I realized that every time that I was in really humid situations, be it the shower, a Minnesota summer, Australia, Miami, it would happen more often than not. And my body would just go into like shock and overdrive.
The humidity.
And so these doctors and everything were saying that I was having anxiety attacks for years. So I was just writing writing it off that I was an anxious person. And I didn't think that I was anymore. I was when I was younger, but I didn't think I was as an adult. But I think so often for all of us, people start saying things about us and we start believing it. And so over time, I just believed that I was an anxious person and these were anxiety attacks, when in reality, I just had an allergy that was making me stuffed and my brain was going in and my whole body was going into like shock because of it. So it's crazy.
How did you fix it?
I didn't fully. I think it's kind of intense because there's like multiple layers to it.
And things.
Different like allergies, nose sprays, and things like that. I think there's also like additional acidic things in my stomach that are.
Yeah, but you were convinced that it was something totally different.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think it's so right. How often are we there? And again, I'm sure there are people out there that would say, no, I have legitimate anxiety attacks.
100%.
But yeah, that can be frustrating, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of my friends have anxiety. I think I do in small amounts every once in a while, but I don't have it compared to a lot of my friends. And man, just seeing the way that they deal with things, and it's tough. It's a real thing. Mm-hmm. It's
Speaking of anxiety, during COVID, that's the anxiety part. But you got married during COVID.
Got married during COVID.
Talk about, you had quite the wedding.
Yes. Big wedding. No. So it was like the week before everything shut down, and we were sitting in our living room with some of my friends, one of my employees, and my wife, or my girlfriend at the time. And they were like, hey, just to let you know, the government buildings are closing tomorrow. And we were like, oh no, does that mean that we aren't gonna be able to get a marriage certificate? We thought we were gonna get married like 9 months later. And so we called Miami. They were like, we're already closed. We called the next county over. They were closed. We ended up finding like 2 hours away. If we drove there and made it in like 2.5 hours, we could get our marriage certificate. So we were like, let's go get married. And we just hopped in the car and we drove across the state and we got our marriage certificate. And then when we actually got married, there was 6 of us in the woods. My parents on FaceTime. Definitely wouldn't recommend it. But it was unique, and it is what it is. We ended up having this big like beach house party for a bunch of our friends instead. And it was great, but it was fun.
But it's kind of like making lemonade from lemons and doing, I mean, it's kind of the theme of your story and your optimism and everything is turning things that are bad into really stories that 100%. You can share. And what was that like even like the beginning of marriage? You're not even seeing family. You're right in the midst of COVID. Like
totally.
You have this business that was the business kind of growing at that point?
Growing substantially at that point. For sure. Yeah. Just being away from family is tough for sure. My wife's family was close to us, so we got to see them some. But you're thrown into it. It's like, okay, for the next year, it's just you two pretty much on lockdown together. And we made the best of it. Mm-hmm. And you learn very fast. I think when you're thrown into things and forced into it, you just learn to adapt and you learn to make the most of it. And so that's what we did. And it turned into a beautiful thing.
I want to talk a little bit about church in general. Obviously, we're everything we do kind of revolves around that. But talk about what you've seen from the Bible study, and maybe even talking to church leaders right now who feel overwhelmed by the stats. You read, Gen Z. I think it's 6% of Gen Z is considered biblically literate who are Christians. Yeah. But you're selling all these books in the Bible study that people are reading, and it's kind of contrary to some of the stats you see. Yeah. What are just some trends and things that you're seeing as an entrepreneur who's always doing new things, who's traveling around, speaking at young adult things? What do you see from this younger generation who, again, statistics would say they're not interested? Yeah. What are some of those trends and themes that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think a lot of Gen Z wants to have an authentic relationship with Jesus, and I think they want people to walk out their faith. So you see so many people that are like, oh yeah, I follow Jesus, but I don't go to church because I don't want to be associated with Christians. And I think that's a major issue because that means that the Christians that they're seeing aren't living out the lifestyle that we believe is right. And so I think instead of just learning things all the time, we need to actually live it out. So we need to be feeding the hungry, giving drink to the thirsty, like clothing the naked, like things that Jesus said from a very actionable, pretty simple theological standpoint. I think that's going to change so much if we learn to adapt that into our day to day.
Yeah, and I think so many young people want to get involved, but I think there's two sides of that coin. To where on one side you have leaders who feel like, no, you need to earn that. You don't just get to lead from the front. But then on the other side, without empowering people, they maybe never will step into that opportunity because when are you ready, right? When are you ready to get married? When are you ready to be a parent? When are you ready to do all those things?
Totally.
I think that's so huge.
Yep.
You're again, we talk about your optimism and your positivity, but what are things that keep you up at night?
Keep me up at night.
If anything, right?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know if much keeps me up at night right now.
Is there anything that like you look in the world as kind of someone with an entrepreneurial spirit and you say, this is a problem that I see in the world that I don't see it's been solved yet?
Yeah. I think it goes back to, I think in the Christian space, it's different from other spaces, but I think it is like helping people live out their faith in actionable ways and just giving people the boost and the resources to do that. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do right now. And as a church, we have the ability to make those resources and to be a prime example for what that looks like. And so I'm all about it. I think Gen Z is going to change the world if they get a hold of this Jesus revolution. I think it's going to completely shock the world through them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there in the book you talk about so many things that you've done, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that you're preparing to do. Yeah. Maybe as we come to a close, can you share a little bit about what you're dreaming about, what your next steps are? Again, you get the Bible study in the hands of a publishing group, you get your book out. In a lot of ways, it's like you've done it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But as we've talked about as an entrepreneur, it's the beginning is every day.
Totally. Yeah.
So what's next for Zach?
For sure. I think I just love creating. I realized over the last 4 years that I don't necessarily love running businesses, but I love the creation process. So like we had hired a COO just to run our company for us, which allowed me to write and create new products. And so that's kind of the spot that I'm at right now is this whole it's a new phase of life for me. It's a huge beginning. So working on a new book, working on some online classes to help other people release their own books as well, and hopefully start businesses that change the world. Going to be speaking a bunch in this next year.
Yeah, I think we're speaking together at a conference coming up. So I saw that at the young adult event. So,
awesome. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm excited for that.
Can't wait.
We'll get to continue our conversation.
Love it.
Well, this has been fun. Again, there's so much more we could talk about. Again, I feel like there's so many stories in here, but I'd really recommend for anyone who's feeling like, man, I just need a little bit of dose of good in the world.
Yes.
This is a great resource. See the good. But more so, just even you in general, and you post on social and just encouragement. And again, you ooze this encouragement, and so as promised, I'm smiling at the end of this.
Got to make some stickers.
You have your smiling hat on, you have smiling stickers, you have all of it. But would there be any encouragement to, again, being somebody who you're not a pastor in the sense of working in the church, but you're a Christian entrepreneur in the way? What would be maybe your final message to pastors and church leaders who, most people listening are day to day working in the church?
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how they can encourage people like you who are in their churches. Because in a lot of ways, for us who are in ministry, we love cheering you on, and we love that you can start businesses and do these things. But our call is to the church.
Right.
But sometimes I feel like we struggle as pastors to pastor people like you.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're like always doing something new. And I'll shut up after this. But the two things I think people struggle with is, one, the entrepreneurial attitude is intimidating.
Yeah. Because
they feel, well, shouldn't I be coming up with these great ideas in the church?
Sure.
And then on the other side is they don't know what to do with that energy. And so it kind of goes together. But could you talk about maybe people in your life who've helped get you where you are today?
Yeah.
And maybe some advice you'd give to pastors on how they can help cultivate people like you?
Sure. I think it's often that pastors or people in the church will just push away, just like you said. And so I think really pulling people like me in and engaging with us and even just asking us questions and giving us a voice at the table would be super life-giving for any entrepreneur out there, because we love seeing a problem and we love finding a solution for it. And so if you came to me and were like, hey, this is what we're dealing with, where does your brain go with it? I think that's where people like me would really thrive.
Mm-hmm. And so giving those opportunities. Do you? What do you feel like is the biggest? You talk about your you kind of walked away or were seeking and had that time in Australia. Was there something specifically that led you that way? Because again, you talk about growing up and now you're on fire for God, using your gifts in that way.
Yeah.
But not everyone has that same story to where they come back. Was there something that you saw as a young person that kind of made you go down that path?
Yeah, I think seeing people not living out their faith really and being extremely judgmental of just the world was a huge turnoff for me. And then I saw a lot of people that weren't in the church that believed something different, that were the most kind, generous people around. So I was kind of having this crisis of faith, like, well, who do I want to be associated with? And I think a lot of people are going through that right now, deconstructing their faith. And most of the time it has nothing to do with God. It has something to do with something that somebody in their church said or the way that they were treated. And so they pulled back. And I think that's similar to what happened with me. And once I actually focused on just the Bible and getting to know God personally, that's when everything changed for me. Mm-hmm. And so I think if anybody's listening that is like on the verge of walking away or stepping back, is like, make sure that you're stepping back because it has something to do with God and not other people, because I think God's always going to be there for you and is going to continue chasing after you. And I really do believe that if you spend time diving into scripture, spending time in prayer and in worship, you're going to thrive.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. Such a reminder. And I think even for pastors out there, to create that space for people.
Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed, and we can end with this because I said I would end. I'm a true pastor. I have two closes. But I think sometimes people are afraid of questions because they don't know the answers.
Yeah.
But I've seen, especially for young people, but people who see maybe some of that, hey, that doesn't seem to add up.
Yeah.
And then a pastor's, well, no, we can't talk about that, or we can't ask that question. To me, I would encourage pastors and anyone who's a Christian.
Yeah.
A question is such a good thing.
Yeah.
Because that means that they want to know the answers. And what we believe is that the Bible has those answers.
Yeah.
And the Bible is clear. The deeper you go, there's more to it. And so for anyone who feels intimidated by and I think there's some truth where there are some young people that ask it they don't sound respectful, or tell me that answer, or you're old and you're this. It's like, whoa, settle down. But I think a lot of people, creative people and people who express themselves in entrepreneurial ways, they're seeking because they don't know. They're not trying to be combative. And obviously, maybe a year studying the Bible, that's helpful. But for so many, we'd love them to stay in churches, do that, be entrepreneurial, see the good.
Let's go.
And man, I'm excited for all that you have coming up. I'm sure people who are interested, they can get the book, but follow you on social, stay in touch with everything that's going on. And Zach, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I love that you could be on Talking Church today, and just be blessed with all that you have going on. And I'm sure we'll see some new things from all that you have going on soon. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. It's an honor.